So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking out all of the glue and the sealants out of this joint, make my cut line here, and then start opening up the cavity and seeing what I'm working with.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the GTT to GTR conversion project that I've been working on over, I guess, a couple of YouTube video installments before this. My name is Stuart Leask, owner and operator of Leaskspec, and what this series is about is basically kind of going over some of the things that I have figured out while converting this GTT to a BNR 34 or GTR chassis, with a couple of different things, quarter panels, repairing rust panels, some of the things that I found along the way, etc. The videos that you're seeing right now are just short clips of the first side that I did. I didn't really record this side in depth. I like to actually do the first side on my own and try to figure out a process that works better for me. And then on the second side, I make a point to go over and in-depth video so that I can show you guys all of the steps that I take to basically complete this process. So without further ado, let's get into it. To start, what I need to do is I need to finish up all the welding on the inner arch extension. Basically, I need to do this so that I can remove the quarter panel and see all of the areas that I'm accessing and working towards. So I finished welding it all, cut back the lip because obviously there's excess lip, grind it all back, get it flush, and basically make it to where I'm going to be able to remove the quarter panel on and off throughout the project, check fitment on things, and know that this is a part of the equation that's never going to move. Also, it should be noted that this is the part of the project that I hate the smell of the most. Now, with all the panels out of the way, I can take a look at the areas that I need to start prepping before I can weld in the new panels, or at least start priming them and getting everything set up. So you can kind of see some of the corrosion and everything that's on the outside of the frame rail. This is where the skirt panel is kind of gonna run down. And so before I put that on, I won't have access to the backside of a lot of this. So I'm gonna spend my time making a mess in the garage and yeah, as you can see, doing all of the dirty and gross work that is the least fun part of this. And then next I'm going to start on the area where the skirt panel is going to sit on top of the trunk floor. You can see all the old spot welds are kind of being dressed down now. Pretty much just basic stuff. A lot of the time spent on this part of the job is really just prep, getting ready for a weld through primer and all of that good stuff, making sure all the old seam sealer is gone and out of the way. And I went ahead and drilled some spot weld holes through the new skirt panel, as this will be where I plug weld everything. And then after applying all the primer and all the weld through primer, this is the panel in its semi-permanent resting place, ready for welding and ready to get fixed in. I use two M6 bolts to kind of locate it, and then I use copper weld between each surface that's going to see any sort of extensive amount of heat. And it seems kind of redundant, but also the areas where you're going to weld directly, it's a good idea to just take a wire brush and kind of get rid of the weld through primer on those areas. And then after all of that, now it's just time for the simple stuff, just welding and getting everything permanently in place. And then after that, just dress the welds down, kind of get it flat and back to a good point, put little markers where the spot welds are so that you don't lose track of them, and coat and primer, and then it's time to move on to the next panels. I'm freeze framing this just for 1 second because I forgot a step when I was recording. That panel on the left gets made a little bit later, but I wanted to kind of explain to you how I came up with that template that's on the lower right hand side. To keep the same look on each side, what I've done is I've actually just flipped the template from the other side. So it's still got that same contour right there, which matches the metal panel behind. And then we'll fix this. We'll mimic this break, and then I'll kind of sand this down so that it can kind of push up a little bit higher. But altogether, that is how the rear pocket's going to turn out. And I'll just kind of try to hurry through this segment. This isn't anything special or anything to write home about, but I always find it intriguing how people approach the steps involved to create a panel that has multiple angles on one piece, or they've kind of got two different kind of curves, and you've got to figure out how to accomplish them. This is just my approach to this situation. It's probably not right, but this is what made sense in my brain. And I'm always intrigued by what other fabricators do to come up with these custom, unique one-off panels. Where do they give in and do welds? How much of it is done by metal forming, etc. So anyways, I just thought somebody out there might enjoy this. If not, sorry. And then, as I stated before, it is imperative that that quarter panel can be removed and installed multiple times throughout the process to ensure fitment. So just as the other panel, I used M6 bolts on the back to locate it to the parcel shelf. And then I've obviously got my Clecos in their standard position on the fender lip and on the chassis. I checked fitment on this dress panel and everything's looking good. And so now I take my corner piece, which is now prepped and ready for plug welding, and fit it up and make sure that everything is sitting happily and in line. Then I'll apply a little weld through primer. This is the SEM product that I was showing you earlier from the previous panel. And I kind of put that into place while everything's wet. That way it gets a good adhesion between both of the panels and anywhere that's going to see a pretty extreme amount of heat. And once I'm happy with the location of everything, I'll go ahead and clamp it into place. And then it is time to start welding. And then, as if by magic, once again, that lower left panel has just shown up out of nowhere. I made this on camera, and I was actually kind of excited to share it because, again, I'm one of those people that's always intrigued by how people make panels, especially ones that have complex shapes, odd dents, or curves, or something like that. And I absolutely cannot find that footage. So after building it, this is me kind of test fitting it, seeing where all of its tolerances are. I let the factory stuff overlap so I knew exactly where I needed to cut to give just a little bit of an air gap so that everything would kind of weld up real nice and not create a whole lot of push or pull. I try to keep that factory look with the little indentation in the back. I did that with a bead roller. I thought that turned out kind of cool looking. And this is me trying to figure out the flange for the piece. The flange is kind of complex. It has a little bit of a bump. And if you know much about these panels, you know that I'm not building this exactly like factory did. I had to come up with something a little aftermarket in a sense, but that would still seal up like factory. Because obviously I don't have a presser, I don't have a form or any of the stuff that they used at Nissan to build these original panels. So I kind of have to think outside of the box with the skill sets that I have and the knowledge that I have on this particular topic. So now I'm going to go ahead and trace out my cut point before I remove the panel. I'll take it off, clean it up, apply any of the notes that I've made in this process, and then see how it fits up after the fact. And then wash, rinse, repeat, same as the other panels. Apply all the weld through primer, get everything in place, make sure you lock it in a good position, and make sure that nothing's kind of pulled, twisted, or out of place. And to me, on this initial inspection, everything looked pretty good. There's still a couple of things that I'll need to address, but I can get to that once the quarter panel is off. But otherwise, the gaps that were of biggest concern to me are good to go. So I'll go ahead and proceed with welding the part.
Okay, so what I've started doing is I fixture this piece end right here. So what I did was when I had the quarter panel on, I made one tack here, and then I used a Cleco here to locate it. So basically that kind of pinched everything together. This strip of flange right here was reminiscent of the piece that I had originally cut off that was far too rotten to keep. But the reason I kept this flange is I thought that it would be a very nice way to tie this into this. As well as kind of give me a guide and everything else. Additionally, it was hard to keep this flanged edge when I had this step roll right here. I wanted to keep this detail, and it was hard to keep this detail and integrate the flange. So there's a couple of pieces of this that I had to weld in after the fact. One is this lower corner with this bump right here, as well as this piece. And then I still need to finish this as I get all of these mated together. So now that I've got this done, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of clean up the backside, make it as smooth of an inside corner as possible. I know that this is gonna get seam sealer, but just in case. And then I am going to commit I'm gonna weld it to this piece. I'm gonna test fit the quarter panel, probably at least a couple more times. And then as I do, and I like everything that fits, I'm gonna keep going along, working this edge until I've got all of this blended, worked, welded, and then that should wrap up the top and the rear side of this quarter panel. All right, so this is the finished product. Everything's been welded, ground flush. There's just a light layer of primer on top of everything, just so it doesn't rust or corrode or anything. In the meantime, all this has all been welded together. And then this is inside the wheel well here. So you'll notice that I have made a bunch of holes in the outside lip of the lower pocket, and that is so I can spot weld inside the quarter panel whenever it's installed. So let me go ahead and install that and show you guys what the fit up is like. All right, and without further ado, let me go ahead and show you guys the finished product. Obviously from the outside, it's gonna look exactly the same. And then here's kind of a look inside to see some of the work that was completed. First, you'll see the skirt panel. I obviously welded it, dressed the welds back a little bit, and just did like a rough coat of primer. This is just rough. It's temporary to stop any sort of rust or corrosion while I finish this job in the interim. And then in the back side, you can kind of see some of the new panel work that was done back there. So let's go ahead and look inside the wheel well and show you a little bit more in depth what exactly happened. Again, I know that I have this quarter panel on and off multiple times. It might seem redundant to keep putting the clecos and all of the bolts, everything on and off every single time. But the reason I do this is because I want to make sure that with everything I build and everything I do or change on this car, nothing moves and nothing affects the fitment of this quarter panel. As you can see, everything is still absolutely right on the money. Nothing's moved, and this is a very good sign. If there's a little bit of LED strobe, sorry, that's kind of like a cheap light that I'm using. I'm experimenting with it a little bit. But anyways, this is a look at some of the finished work. So this is the inside corner that I had to reconstruct by hand and spot weld back in, kind of welded, dressed it back just a little bit, welded, dressed it back just a little bit. Please excuse some of the roughness of these welds. I was welding to corroded metal, and I did my best to get to as fresh as possible, but I didn't want to go too far, and then I just kind of end up chasing a huge issue all the way down the line. This is the new inner pocket that I built by hand. Kind of added some details here to make it look as factory as possible. And then of course I've got my bent flange here, and this will receive a healthy coat of seam sealer and everything else to help it and give it some longevity. Now, when you saw it from the naked side without the quarter panel on, you probably noticed that there was a bunch of holes all the way along this flange. And this flange is actually built to contour to the inside of the quarter panel. So you'll see that I've got basically a bunch of places to spot weld. I'm gonna clamp it as tight as I can to the quarter panel, spot weld it all the way. I don't see this as being an issue because the area that I'll be spot welding to, well, that's not visible once the bumper is installed. So I think this is gonna be the best finished product, and overall, I am extremely happy with how this turned out. Now I could say that this side is done. Let me start over. This side is mostly done. The rear pocket is done, which was completely corroded and rusted away, and that was rebuilt all by hand. This the inner wheel well, that is all done. This was recreated by hand to make up for the wider GTR fenders. Now, I need to focus on, my light working, but I need to focus on this. You can see where I stopped on my inner wheel well. And I stopped there for a reason. I have a lot of corrosion right here on this front inner pocket, and it's actually the exact same story on both sides. Over there, excuse the light, you can see I've actually cut into that one already. Anyways, I have a lot of corrosion here. I need to cut this open and start exposing it and get to as fresh of metal as possible. Now, why am I doing that, or what am I gonna do to fix it? Well, thanks to SR Auto Bodies and SR Auto Source, this panel right here, the backside of this pinch panel, this is now available as a new component, as most of you will already know. And I actually have those components on hand. So what I plan on doing, I plan on cutting the car open from the interior floor side, and I plan on replacing this piece and then adding some structural reinforcement along here as much as I can.
and then I have to drill for air jacks just about right here, give or take. I haven't really planned out exactly where I want to do it. I need to place the subframe reinforcement back on and kind of see what I've got room for and what I'm happy with. But anyways, that's the plan. That's the next thing that's going to happen to this car. So before I do the rear pocket on the passenger side, I've just decided that I'm going to go ahead and commit to the front. So I'm going to commit to these two pinch panels, get these things replaced, get the gussets in, and then it's just a matter of rebuilding the rear pocket on the passenger side, and then try to see if we want to address any of the stuff in the front or what the next step is going to be. So anyways, as always, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it very much. If you guys have any comments or suggestions, tips on recording, views, shots, or hell, anything else that you particularly want to see from this project, just let me know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know it all, but I am doing my best to share my experience as I've gone through and try to teach myself this skill set with no previous knowledge. So anyways, appreciate the follow, and we'll be back soon with another. Thanks. Bye.